It's not the leaf free C. It is though color e-ink at this 7-inch size, and this is the only one you can get currently in the West at this size. I've already done a little bit of a preview video, and I'm going to give you the benefit of my sort of thoughts after a couple of days. And my first sort of question is Bigme actually catching up? So this is the B571. Okay, that's how we're knowing it at the minute. Oh, I appear to be on, not on a pen of any sort. It's the B571, which is, this is the kind of naming convention that Bigme are going for now. It's a different naming convention for different things. A few things to know about it straight away. It is not a Wacom EMR pen, which is, that is not as good. You can look at this and look at this handwriting compared to handwriting on a Wacom EMR device, and you'll see the difference is huge. It does have page turn buttons, but one thing I'll notice already is the page turn buttons don't work in their own notes software. So I think that's, you've made that a feature of the device, and the page turn buttons don't seem to work on their own notes software. There are some good things about it though, and I'll talk about that as well. It is a Kaleido-free screen. It's a color e-ink screen at this size, this 7-inch size, which is, it's an interesting new thing. As I said just a moment ago, it is the only way you can buy at that size currently. I have a feeling books might well come out with a reader at this size with that color e-ink screen, as well as there is one in the Chinese market already. This one is definitely more of a reader than it is a note taker. The page turn buttons, they do work in their own reader. So I have been using it for a little bit of reading, find my way around this device. If I go to my library, I've been reading this one. I've just downloaded some things here, and they do work just fine here on the built-in reader as well. I might look to actually read a graphic novel on here, because I think that is one of the things that, this sort of size of device, this price point as well, this is a good case for that. So I want to know, what are the classic graphic novels that you might recommend? I've got to kind of read this handwriting. If I just make that point, if I show you the difference between some handwriting, the same idea, my sort of first thoughts on this A6X2, handwriting on here is looking an awful lot more attractive. And that is because it is just a nicer screen feel, but most importantly, because this is the Wacom EMR pen. Wacom EMR is just the leading kind of third party that you can buy stylus technology, and I definitely recommend it for anyone. So it just isn't the same. It just isn't as accurate. In my sort of first thoughts video, I did some diagonal lines, and it just isn't up to scratch. You can see the diagonal lines are getting quite a lot of wobble there. And that's because this is what's called a capacitive stylus. It's battery powered. There's a battery in the back here. And actually, when you pull it out, every single time you pull it out, you have to wake it up. The front button is not a highlight button as you might expect it to be. It's actually a wake up from sleep mode button. So you have to press this button to wake this stylus up so it doesn't waste its battery. And the back button is an eraser, which is obviously that's nice to have, but you can get Wacom styluses that have that as well. And the reason for that isn't Bigme's fault. The reason for that is because e-ink, who make the screens, don't put a Wacom layer on a screen at this size. So I don't think there is a way of getting a Wacom layer on a screen of this size currently. So generally, this is only of interest to you if you're looking for a reader of this size. However, if you're already in the Bigme ecosystem, if you've got one of the bigger Bigme devices, then this might be a useful companion, because at least you can add to your notes, at least you can access your notes, and you have something which is that right size for reading. And it is a nice size for reading. It is a nice screen on here. I'll turn the lights right down. It has some of those issues that some Bigme devices do. Now, it does have a rotate mode as well. So I've got auto rotate on, but you'll see it doesn't auto rotate in the Notes app for some reason. And this is the type of thing, as we go through my sort of first thoughts on here, this is the type of thing with Bigme is, in a book, rotating it around to hold it, your one arm's getting tired, it just rotates like this. However, let's see if you notice something. If I go forward on the page turn buttons, notice what direction it's actually going. It's actually going backwards, because although that rotate is really quite nice and it's really snappy, it happens really quickly, the page turn buttons, they don't follow the orientation of the actual system. It goes forwards now, down as you would expect, but the page turn buttons, they don't follow the direction of the system. So when you rotate it, down is up and up is down. So that's quite frustrating. Of course, tapping on the screen still takes you backwards and forwards as well. Now back to my notes. It also comes preloaded with Kindle as well, which is nice. But the Kindle that was on here was actually the Chinese version of Kindle. And I had to go in, I couldn't sign into that. I tried a couple of times. I couldn't go back. I couldn't stay logged in, if you like, to Kindle. And so that was really quite frustrating. I was like, why is this? And of course, all I had to do was then go into Google Play. And that's a really good plus of it, that it's got a Google Play Store and you can have any Android app that you like. And then it worked just fine by getting the actual Google Play and installing my own version of Kindle. That does work just fine as well. However, the page turn buttons don't work out of the box for Kindle. So that's frustrating as well. And I think there is a way to assign them, but it is, it's just that little bit more difficult. It's more difficult than it should be. The page turn buttons should, if one of the sort of things you're going to ship on it, you're going to actually pre-install Kindle on here, then why not make sure that it's the Western version for the devices you're shipping out to the West, and make sure that the page turn buttons work just straight out of the box with Kindle. I don't think that's too far. I don't think that's too much to ask for a company that's, yes, this is a great price, $230, I think is the price internationally. It just isn't ready for the Western market like you would expect. And you can get the black and white version for $200. Is it fast enough for Google News? Yes. Let's go to a browser. I am home already. So let's go to any browser and go to our Google homepage and see how that works. One thing that I'm finding really quite nice about it compared to other tablets is actually the touch is really quite snappy. It's really quite snappy indeed. The touch is really quite good. And I'm wondering whether not having the Wacom layer actually means that the touch is quite good. So let's have a little look at that. I mean, yeah, I think this is quite nice actually, isn't it? Yeah, this is one of the news feeds I have. And yes, you can go into the e-ink center. That's that one there. And you can change it. If you didn't like it sort of being, if you wanted a higher refresh rate, then you can go to extreme speed mode, and you can see now it should slide about a bit more smoothly. And actually that's good. That's quite good performance for color e-ink at the kind of high refresh rate. That's not bad at all. And there is a shortcut, and that's full refresh is just on the side there. I would probably recommend that what you do is you actually use the normal mode, or even the HD mode, or even the HD 265, and you get used to, when you need to, in the HD mode, it should automatically refresh once I've scrolled. Get used to occasionally doing those full screen refreshes when needed. Yeah, generally the color e-ink is good. That's a great thing about it. And generally the device is snappy. There's enough, as usual with the Bigme device, there's enough RAM, enough processor speed. You see this, yeah. So now in fast mode, normal fast. And now I think, okay, I've gone there. Now I can just flick up. I should just flick up from there and do a full screen refresh. You see it also, it's not well optimized. That flick up is to do a full screen refresh, but what's happening is that it's not just doing the full screen refresh, but it's also flicking the page up as well. So it should be optimized well enough to be ignoring the flick up the page as well. So cool. Let's have a little look at the other notes that I've made on here. Back to my homepage, back to these review notes. The pen is terrible. You have to wake up. I've talked about that. And actually, I noticed when I was writing, and most of these, okay, it's pretty poor handwriting here. You can probably do a little bit better than this. I was actually writing this when I was sat up in bed during reading that Staedtler book, actually having to wake the thing up and then writing it. Actually, you can perhaps hear sometimes across the middle of the screen. I'm holding up to the mic. But actually it kind of creaks a little bit. Kind of like there's a creakiness across the screen as well. I just don't think that this screen was ever intended for note taking. However, if it's the right size, if it's the right thing for the color e-ink and you need an occasional bit of stylus input, maybe that's acceptable. And there's that reason, for some reason the notes aren't rotating. The touch does feel good. Having to actually touch the button to wake up, it's another thing that gets in the way of your flow. If you're wanting to do any serious writing or serious thinking, then this isn't going to be the one for you, I don't think. However, as a price point for getting into an Android, full Android with Google Play, full color, all those things at that price point, there could be something compelling for there. Also, the page turn buttons make a bit of a noise. Often one of myself or my partner will be reading and the other one won't, the other one might want to go to sleep, is actually that if you were using those page turn buttons, then that would be annoying in the silence, you know, of the night to hear that click. Whereas the book's leaf, absolute silence on that click, you know, really quite quiet on that click there. So I would say they've, you know, a bit of engineering to do just to dampen that, so you don't get that click. You don't need a satisfying click. That's not a mechanical blue keyboard or something like that we want. Yeah, and definitely make sure that it can work in all of your native apps. It should work, in my opinion. They just need to think about the experience for that Western market, as I said earlier on. Why install the Chinese Kindle? Why have a Chinese bookshop? So if I go in here to my book mall, that might be something you would say. Maybe no, I don't think it would even make much sense in the States, to be honest. Bookstore, but you can see straight away, look, you know, there's nothing aimed at me here. Just they need to port things. They need to spend time to actually make sure that it's ported for the market that it's aimed at, because these things aren't cheap. Oh, that's something that I haven't seen it do before. Let's come back now. That's fine. But there we are. So there was a crash there, but it hasn't completely gone. Yeah, and why leave the button on here just as wake up? Couldn't it be a highlight once the pen has woken up? Could it not be a highlight button as well, perhaps? Yeah. It's just the pen is going to be a nuisance. And then this, just to say, the software has improved, but there's just still a long way to go. And one thing they did need to add, which thankfully they have added, is the manual. And the manual now is quite good. And I think they're going somewhere. You know, I think that they're not sort of a user guide here. And these little user guides, they pop up the first time that you use any particular part of that. So you can see it will tell you, you know, how to use things. And any of those things that just aren't very intuitive the first time, if it's your first time coming from something like a Kindle or something like that, you're going to find that actually there is a decent enough user guide to get you around. Does this mean Bigme is actually catching up with the other competitors? And then we'll just have a last little look around the B751. I guess their naming convention 7 must be the size, and then 5.1 I'm imagining next generation of the B752.